Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
This is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I am here with Amy Schwartz, one of my fabulous master coaches, and she had an insight which she emailed to me that I totally agreed with. And Amy, do you want me to read this or do you want to talk about it?
You go ahead and read it and then I'll say more.
Okay. The insight was an adaptation of Smokey the Bear's quote. Smokey the Bear's quote was,
only you can prevent forest fires.
Right. So Amy adapted this and said, a refutation doesn't stop a binge, only you can stop a binge. And it kind of put the purpose of refutations in context. Let me just explain for anybody who doesn't know what a refutation is. In our system, we draw lines in the sand, only ever have chocolate on a weekend again. And then when we hear the pig saying, come on, you can start again tomorrow, it'll be just as easy, we say, wait a minute, and then we refute that idea. The way the brain works, you're going to have stronger cravings tomorrow if you do that, and you're going to be more likely to say start tomorrow. So the only time you can eat healthy is in the present, and if you're in a hole, you should stop digging. That's an example of a refutation, which is basically fixing your thinking and removing the justification for breaking your own rules. Now, Amy, what caused you to say that a refutation doesn't stop a binge, only you can stop a binge?
I'll go a little further back then, and we can come back to the quote and the comment or whatever, but we do Q&A calls in the program, and there are some people who come back every week, and I think I used to be one of them to say, oh, I'm still binging, I haven't stopped. You have a system in place of all the steps you need to do to stop binging or overeating. But one of the steps that's sort of unspoken is you have to make the decision to stop binging. And I think some people, and perhaps I was one of them, believe that somehow magically your motivation or your logic or something is going to kick in and make you want to stop binging. But it doesn't really happen. I mean, many people who either read your book or join the program, they've made that decision. And so you don't need to point it out or point out that they haven't made the decision. But other people are not really aware of that.
That's very true.
And there's also clues in the language. And this is, as much for our other coaches as for clients. There are clues in how people talk about it. Like sometimes people will say, I really want to stop binging, or I really have to stop binging, or I should stop overeating, or it's really affecting my health. This can't keep going.
And you can tell from those clues that they haven't made the decision.
Right, because they're saying, I want to, I need to, I should, not I will, I've decided to, I'm committed to.
Yes, as if they don't have control. They're not really separated from the reptilian brain. They feel like they don't have control.
And there's another clue. This one's a little harder to describe, but sometimes you'll be talking to somebody and you tell them all the steps to take, whatever their particular situation is, and they answer like, and you can tell by their tone of voice that they're really saying, there's no way I'm going to do that.
Right.
And then there's the opposite one. I know there's one client that used to say, absolutely. And that was
go on to not do it. I know.
Right. And so it's either or absolutely, and it's like you have to be in the middle with a logical decision, not a sort of passive dismissal or an over-enthusiastic agreement.
I mean, it's not a hard decision logically because not binging offers so much more than binging offers. Like binging just offers 18 to 32 minutes of a high and then a couple of days of misery and really a lifetime of dragging extra pounds and cardiovascular risks and all those horrible things. But there's this fantasy that we're going to do it for them. People's dream is to find a wake up skinny pill. And their second dream is, Glenn, you sound like magic on these podcasts, or Amy, you sound like magic on these podcasts. And I've heard the transformation in people's voices. I want you to make me stop binging. I want you to make me want to stop binging. Here's the sad truth. The sad truth is that when you stop rewarding the food cues, let's say you're always having donuts when you pass by a donut store and you see the sign. When you stop actually acting on that and you see the sign and you don't have the donuts, your brain is going to say, where the F are my donuts? It's going to have a worse craving than you ever had. So it's kind of the opposite. When you make the decision to stop binging, you have to make a strong decision because you're going to go through some pretty serious cravings. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it right. I wish I could do it for people. I wish I could. I feel a little bit like I've discovered some magic over the years. There's just so many things that people don't know about how to stop and how to set up tripwires so you know when you're about to talk yourself into binging again and how to disempower those ideas and how to take better care of yourself in the first place so you have fewer desires to say just screw it and you can use your rational brain. But the bottom line is you have to decide to go through that process. And then you have to put one foot in front of the other and do the work to make it happen. And I wish that I could do it for you. And I would if I could, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And this isn't a pill or a treatment. It's a set of very powerful tools and very powerful information that will make it infinitely easier for you to stop once you've decided that that's what you're going to do. Does that jive with your understanding?
Yeah, that's pretty true. That's right. There's also a level of wanting. I wanted to say before I get to that, sometimes you might want to lose weight, but you don't want to stop binging.
Yeah.
So that can be that can be a little bit of a conflict. And there are people who will say that, well, I've been binging for years and I've maintained my weight or even lost weight. But the other thing I wanted to say is there are many people who wake up in the morning and they say, I want to stop binging. Today, I don't want to binge. But then when it comes to that magic time when they do binge, then their pig says to them, I want to binge. And because they're only relying on that emotion, the wanting to binge overrides the wanting to stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the decision is important.
It's an intellectual decision.
Yeah, because the decision says, I know I'll want to binge, but I've decided I'm not going to no matter what.
Mm-hmm. And the commitment is an emotional commitment. The commitment is with your whole mind, body, and soul, but it's an intellectual decision to do that.
Right. It's not an emotion. You can't wait until you feel committed. You have to decide you're committed.
Exactly. It's like when my dad told me I was sitting by his telephone. I did not know how to ask a girl out in high school. And I was kind of sort of in love with this girl, Karen Healy, and she just barely noticed me. But I got her number and I was sitting by my dad's telephone in his office. And he came down and he said, what are you doing? You've been down here for a while. And I said, I want to ask this girl out. And he said, well, what are you waiting for? And I said, I'm waiting till I have the courage to do it. This is when you're going to be here forever. You can't wait until you feel like it. You have to make a decision to do it. Decide. Addiction is really largely about uncertainty. It's largely about refusing to make an addiction because you feel both ways about it. Maybe I'd like to give this up. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. Can I really do it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you want to resolve that by making a decision, which doesn't always have to be to give the thing up. It could be to put some conditional boundaries on it, but you have to make a decision about what role that thing plays in your life. So, Amy, I think this was a good talk. What do you think?
I think so too. Well, I'm going to say it's like some relationships I've been in where it's like the 50% rule applies. What are the pros and cons? Here's what I'm getting out of it. Here's the pain I'm suffering from it. They're almost equally balanced. And then it's harder to make a decision. So you really got to push your thinking so that you decide that the pain of binging outweighs the benefits.
Well, and the pain of binging almost always does outweigh the benefits.
Well, it does logically, but in the moment, it doesn't seem that way.
Yes, right. Right. But that's where you need to look at the logic behind it to make the decision. In the end, that decision turns out to be a leap of faith in some ways because you're usually immersed in the pleasure of binging while you're trying to make the decision, or at least not far from it. No matter how much you reason it out, it always seems like there's value in continuing to binge. So you have to take this intellectual leap of faith and say, it's not worthwhile to binge. I want to become a person who doesn't binge. And I've decided to do that. See, I used I want. I've decided to do that.
Right. You have to decide to do it. And then you have to recognize that your wishes may attempt to override that, and you have to be prepared for it. So if your binging time is after dinner, then before and after dinner, you've got to strengthen your resolve and be prepared for battle, at least in the beginning.
Exactamundo.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.